When I found a too-good-to-be-true apartment in New York City for only $800 a month, I thought I had hit the jackpot. But then the whispers started. Then came the footsteps, the secret door, and the diary from a woman who vanished decades ago. I tried to leave, but the apartment wouldn't let me go, and neither would the thing watching me from the walls. This is the story of how I uncovered a decades-old curse, faced a ghost bound by his own darkness, and had to choose between saving my soul or escaping with my life. But I thought it was over, until I found the final message. Whatever you do, don't read this at night. I never thought I'd find myself living in the creepiest apartment in the city, but hey, rent in New York is a nightmare. So when I stumbled upon the listing on Craigslist, I was ready to jump. The post was simple. Affordable studio apartment, $800 per month, available immediately. Central location. No brokers. Usually, anything that sounds too good to be true is, but I was desperate. I messaged the guy, his name was Mark, and he replied quickly. We arranged a viewing for the next day. When I showed up, the building was old but seemed okay. The kind of place where the elevator smells like ancient pizza and the walls have that faded mustard yellow paint. Classic NYC charm, I thought. Mark met me at the door, an awkward, pale guy in his late 30s, wearing thick glasses. He was polite, but there was something off. Like he didn't quite belong in this world. The apartment was smaller than expected. A cramped studio with peeling wallpaper, a tiny kitchenette, and a window overlooking a brick wall. But for $800, I couldn't complain. The weird part came when I asked about the previous tenants. Mark said it had been empty for a few months because the last tenant just disappeared, no forwarding address, no notice. I thought that was strange, but shrugged it off. I signed the lease that day and moved in 2 weeks later. The first few days were fine. I decorated a little, set up my workspace, and tried to ignore the persistent creaking noises in the walls. But then, strange things started happening. At night, I'd hear footsteps outside my door, slow and deliberate. When I checked, no one was there. The hallway was empty, silent except for the faint hum of the building's ancient wiring. One night, I woke up at exactly 3:33 a.m. to the sound of whispering. It wasn't loud, more like someone muttering under their breath. I sat up and looked around, but the apartment was dark and empty. My phone's clock read 3:33, and for some reason, that freaked me out. The next day, I asked the building super if anyone else had complained about weird noises. He gave me a nervous glance and said, "Some tenants say the place feels different at night. Like there's someone else here." I laughed it off. Ghost stories in an old NYC building? Sure. But that night, as I was about to fall asleep, I noticed my phone battery was nearly dead. I was sure I'd charged it fully. Then my laptop flickered and shut down on its own. Suddenly, the whispers came again, louder this time. They sounded like they were right next to my bed. I pulled the blanket over my head and tried to ignore it. After a week of weird noises and creepy whispers, I was desperate to figure out what was going on. I started to investigate the apartment more thoroughly, convinced there had to be a logical explanation, faulty wiring, maybe some prankster neighbors, or rats. One afternoon, while cleaning, I accidentally knocked over a bookshelf that was pushed against the far wall. Behind it was a faint outline, a door frame. I hadn't noticed any door there before. Heart pounding, I grabbed my phone and shined the flashlight over the edge. It was definitely a door, but it looked old, worn out, and almost like it hadn't been opened in years. I pushed it open with some effort, and inside was a tiny, dark room, like a closet, but bigger. Inside the room, I found an old, dusty diary lying on the floor. The cover was cracked, and the pages yellowed, but the handwriting inside was clear. The first page read, "If you find this diary, know that this apartment holds secrets that should never be uncovered." I shivered but kept reading. The diary belonged to a woman named Evelyn, who had lived here in the 1940s. She wrote about strange noises, shadows moving on their own, and a presence she couldn't escape. But what really freaked me out was the last entry. "He watches me from the walls." I don't know what he wants, but I can feel his eyes every moment. If I disappear, you'll know why. I decided to ask around the building. Maybe someone knew more about Evelyn or what he meant in the diary. I knocked on the door of the apartment next to mine. An elderly woman answered. She had a gentle face but sharp eyes that seemed to look right through me. I introduced myself and asked if she knew about the apartment's history. She sighed deeply. That apartment, it's cursed. I've lived here for 40 years, and I've seen tenants come and go, but that place? No one stays long. I mentioned the diary and Evelyn. Her expression darkened. Evelyn was the last tenant who stayed more than a few months. Then she vanished. No one ever found out what happened. Some say she ran away scared. Others think, worse. I pressed for more details. There was a man, she whispered, glancing around nervously. They called him the Watcher. No one ever saw him clearly, but those walls, they say he's trapped inside, feeding on fear. Feeding on fear? I echoed, feeling a chill. Yes. And he's always watching. If you hear footsteps or whispers, that's him. He wants something from you. Be careful. That night, I locked every door and window. But the feeling didn't leave me. That night, I barely slept. Every creak, every whisper made me jump. At exactly midnight, the temperature in the room dropped so suddenly I could see my breath. I wrapped myself tighter in the blanket, heart pounding like a drum. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw it, a shadowy figure standing just beyond the dim glow of the streetlight filtering through the window. It didn't move or speak. Just stood there, watching. I wanted to scream but found my voice frozen. Suddenly, the figure vanished like smoke, and the whispers came back, louder, urgent, almost pleading. I grabbed the diary, flipping through it frantically, looking for answers. There it was, an entry I hadn't noticed before. To survive the Watcher's gaze, you must show no fear. He thrives on your terror. Stand tall. Speak his name. I blinked at the words. Speak his name? Who was the Watcher? I flipped through the diary's earlier pages, searching for clues. Then I found it, a name scrawled repeatedly in the margins, Malcolm. I felt the hairs on my neck rise. The diary mentioned Malcolm as a former tenant who disappeared under mysterious circumstances, rumored to have been involved in dark rituals. Maybe Malcolm was the Watcher. The next night, I mustered every ounce of courage and whispered into the darkness, Malcolm. The air thickened, the room went deathly silent. Then, a low voice, barely a whisper but clear as day, responded. You called me. I felt something cold brush my skin, like fingers tracing my spine. Why do you haunt this place? I asked, voice shaking but firm. You've trespassed where you shouldn't, the voice said. But I'm curious. Why don't you run? Why don't you fear me? I took a deep breath. Because I'm not alone anymore. At that moment, the shadows shifted, revealing a faint outline of a man, pale, hollow eyes, chained to the walls themselves. Malcolm. Malcolm's ghostly figure hovered in the corner, chains rattling faintly like a broken music box. I was bound here for a reason, he said, voice echoing like a cold wind. I feed on fear to survive. But you're different. You don't run, you don't scream. I swallowed hard. What do you want from me? A bargain, Malcolm whispered. Help me break free, and I will grant you freedom from this place. Stay, and you'll rot in fear forever. I looked around. The apartment suddenly felt like a cage. How do I break your chains? I asked, bracing myself. Find the key, he said. But beware, it's hidden where the walls bleed memories. Before I could ask more, his figure dissolved into the darkness, leaving me alone and trembling. The phrase "where the walls bleed memories" haunted me. I examined every inch of the apartment, touching the cracked plaster, running my fingers along the peeling wallpaper. Then I noticed something I hadn't before, faint streaks on the wall behind the kitchenette. At first, I thought it was rust or dirt, but then I realized it looked like dried blood. My heart raced. I grabbed a flashlight and began scraping carefully at the wall. Behind the plaster, I found a small hollow space. Inside was a rusty, ancient key wrapped in yellowed cloth. I pulled it out, feeling a cold shock surge through my hand. Suddenly, the apartment lights flickered violently. The whispers returned, this time desperate and pleading. I held the key tightly. With the key clutched tightly in my hand, I returned to the hidden door I had discovered weeks ago behind the bookshelf. My pulse hammered in my ears as I slid the key into the lock. It turned with a deep, echoing click. The door creaked open to reveal a narrow staircase spiraling down into darkness. A cold, musty smell wafted up, like damp earth and something metallic. I grabbed a flashlight and descended cautiously, each step groaning under my weight. At the bottom, I found a small underground room, walls covered in old newspaper clippings and photographs taped haphazardly. They showed faces of missing people, scribbled notes, dates, and symbols. Among them was a photo of Evelyn, the woman from the diary. Suddenly, I heard footsteps above, slow and deliberate. "Don't come down here," a voice hissed from the shadows. I swung my flashlight toward the voice, revealing Mark, the guy who rented me the apartment. His eyes were wild, face pale but tense. "You shouldn't have found this," he said. "Who are you?" I demanded. He smiled, but it was cold and empty. "I'm the one who's been trying to keep Malcolm locked away." "Malcolm? You mean the ghost?" "No," Mark said, voice dropping. "Malcolm was a man who went too far with dark magic. I'm his descendant, and it's my family's burden to keep him imprisoned." "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "Because I didn't want you involved," Mark replied. "But now that you have the key, Malcolm can break free." He lunged toward me, but I backed up the stairs and slammed the hidden door shut. The whispers turned into screams. I knew one thing for sure, this apartment wasn't just haunted. It was a battleground. I slammed the hidden door and scrambled upstairs, heart pounding. The apartment felt alive, the walls seemed to pulse, shadows crawling closer. Mark was pounding on the door, shouting, "You don't understand. If Malcolm escapes, the whole building will burn." I had no choice but to get out. I grabbed my coat, my phone, which mysteriously had 1% battery left, and dashed to the main door. As I turned the knob, the building's lights flickered, and a cold gust slammed the door shut before I could step outside. Trapped. I heard the chains rattling again, Malcolm's voice louder than ever. "Come back, don't run." I turned around and saw the apparition of Malcolm standing in the middle of the apartment, chains broken, eyes blazing like embers. "Your fear feeds me," he said. "But you have none." "I'm not afraid of you," I said, trying to steady my voice. Malcolm laughed, a sound like shattering glass. "You're braver than I expected. Maybe you can help me." "Help you?" I asked cautiously. "Yes," he said. "I am bound by the curse of my own making. You can release me, but it will cost you." "What cost?" I whispered. "Your memories of this place, your time here, and a piece of your soul." I hesitated, realizing the true price of freedom. I stood there, heart hammering, staring at Malcolm, a tortured spirit begging for release. He offered freedom, but at a terrifying cost, my memories, my soul. The apartment seemed to close in on me, shadows crawling like living things. Could I let him go, even if it meant losing a part of myself? Or keep the curse chained, and live forever with the fear? I thought of Evelyn, lost to this place. I thought of Mark, desperately trying to contain the darkness. I whispered, "What happens if I refuse?" Malcolm's eyes darkened. "You will stay here forever, a prisoner of your own fear. And I will feast." With trembling hands, I took the key and walked to the hidden door leading to the underground room. "I'll help you," I said, voice barely a whisper. Malcolm's eyes softened for a moment. "Place the key in the altar beneath the stairs," he instructed. I found an old stone slab with strange symbols carved into it. I set the key down. A blinding light filled the room. I felt my memories slipping, names, faces, moments fading like smoke. The shadows retreated. When the light dimmed, Malcolm was gone. The apartment was silent, peaceful. But I felt empty, like a part of me was lost forever. Days passed. The apartment felt normal, almost warm for the first time. No whispers, no footsteps. I tried to recall the details, the diary, Malcolm, Evelyn, but my memories were fuzzy, like a dream slipping away. Mark never showed up again. I never saw him in the building. I started to think maybe it was all in my head. Until one evening, I found a new diary slipped under my door. The cover was blank, but inside the first page was a chilling note. The watcher waits in every shadow. Beware the price of freedom. I flipped through, and to my horror, found my own handwriting, entries describing everything I'd lived through. But the scariest part? The last page was blank, waiting. I realized the curse wasn't broken. It had just passed on to me.